Alrighty, it is March. This is March. March doesn't have quite as big of an impact on the football world as it does like other sports, but still pretty important. We're pretty stoked. It's the PFF forecast. We have got a nice comeback pod here. We had a live show last week. We're in Indy all week, so we've got some combine takeaways. We're going to play a little 5 tweets you'd send out to let people know you were at the combine, which I'm very excited for. We're going to do some free agency talk. So Brady and Rivers, obviously Brady and Edelman were at a basketball game. That was kind of interesting. Trubisky, potentially they're signing someone to push him a little bit. It's interesting.
Like into Lake Michigan?
Yeah, that's the question. Where are they pushing him? Out? AJ Green franchise tag discussion, a little XFL. You're confused about whether the league's going to stay around. And frankly,
concern would be
my
word.
You might be confused too.
Yeah, we'll see.
Who knows? And then I have a great story from the Cincy Y.
Nice.
It's fantastic. I don't know if you have any Indy Y stories. We'll find out. Anyways, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
All righty, let's rock. Let's start. Well, do you want to start with your biggest takeaway, like real takeaway, or do you want to save some fun for later, or do it now?
My biggest takeaway from the combine is, even though the majority of the people we interact with are very smart, they were still overreacting to things that happened.
Yes.
And so my inclination is to always like push back. But I feel like for some players like Jonathan Taylor, Isaiah Simmons, Tristan Wirfs, the guys who really did well, Henry Ruggs, I think that we're double counting.
Yes.
Guys that are good who also tested well, I think instead of counting that as 2 things, we've counted it as at least 3, even among people who are pretty intelligent about the game.
You were going to say 3. See, to me, there's no surprise. Everyone said Henry Ruggs was going to run sub 4.3. There's no surprise there. Everyone saw his speed show up on the field. So when you see it happen, just because you see it happen and see it timed, and maybe if you're one of the chosen few, you also line it up and time it up yourself, a la Charlie Casserly.
Is there a bigger hubris than thinking that your errors are not IID?
No.
Like, hey, look, I
do it the same way every time.
So not only are my measurements, but the errors are systematic.
That's
like my errors are systematic.
Anyways, what I was gonna say is I think it's double counting in the sense that you treat them as like 2 different things, when really it's like 1.1, 1.2, maybe. In some cases, I just don't. Like, we knew Henry Ruggs was an athletic freak of nature. All of a sudden, by the way, Henry Ruggs like basketball mixtape. Have you seen it?
I did. It was amazing. It looked kind of like me dunking, except for not at all.
All of a sudden, that surfaces. But this didn't just happen. We've known this guy was an athletic freak of nature for a very long time.
Yep.
The same with a lot of these other guys. Isaiah Simmons, I guess, 4.39 is super impressive, but none of this is surprising given all the different positions that he played in college and how good he was at all of them. So really it's confirming. The only thing that I would take away from it is if Isaiah Simmons came out and ran like a 4.9 or Henry Ruggs ran a 4.6. First off, I'd be like, are you injured?
Yeah. Well, which was the case for a couple players, it did sound like.
Although one of my takeaways was that if you're looking for a grit test, it's Laviska Shenault running the 40, needing surgery for a core injury.
Having like a relatively like a passable time. It's like not like he ran like a 4.8.
Yeah, it wasn't you limping out there with your calf.
Yeah, it wasn't. But yeah, that was the thing that, and even people like, and granted, it is the consistent tug we have in our company where we're analysis, but we're also content. So you have to sort of elicit eyeballs to our stuff, and so you have to be a little bit excitable. Exciting.
There's a difference between incorporating it logically in a projection and getting excited about crazy athleticism. It's perfectly fine to get excited about Henry Ruggs running a sub 4.3. Right? Like that's cool. Seeing Tristan Wirfs be ridiculously athletic at that big, that's fine to get excited about. But when it comes down to saying, okay, now all of a sudden is my projection of him changed dramatically, that's where you can't overreact. You can be both excited and tempered in your projection.
Yeah, I agree. And then the issue then becomes, like, when it comes to somebody like Tristan Wirfs, does that immediately make him the best tackle in the class? I wrote an article last week about Andrew Thomas and how, like, his projection was the best. If you sort of look, he was a little lower than Wirfs as a pass protector, better as a run blocker. Do all of these things automatically make him the best tackle, the first tackle that should be chosen? I'm guessing in the minds of many, the answer is yes. In the minds of us, maybe not. But it does sort of change the calculus a little bit in terms of, you know, like Thomas is sort of middle of the pack athletically, and then Wirfs wasn't, and so those are the questions that we want to answer. It's not like this thing of like, okay, everybody's to the combine, and so like all of the slates are washed clean, as if we're sort of starting quarter 2 in a class, and then the people that do well automatically have the A's. Like, no, like this is basically in some sense a final exam. And, you know, your grade going into the final exam matters way more than the grade on the final. And, like, we have to make sure that we weigh those things properly.
Well, here's the interesting question. So that was one of the ones that I thought was really interesting because Isaiah Simmons, Jeff Okudah, even Chase Young not doing the combine drills changed 0 for me. Mm-hmm. The offensive tackles one was a little interesting, and I'm very excited to see once we get all the combine data. So I'm going to tease this a little bit. Our hope is to do a mock that your GM told you not to worry about this week. It's going to be me and you. It's going to be calculators, spreadsheets, actually none of those things, but we're going to go through and mock out the first round, and we're going to do it with our projection system as the baseline for it. And thinking about how our athleticism score, it does matter. Like if Tristan Wirfs is one of the best athletically, gifted pass protectors we've seen, that is a big deal relative to being in the average. Like we change our projection a decent amount. So it wouldn't surprise me, if all of a sudden that gap is a lot closer. But what's interesting is the NFL may overestimate that.
Yeah, so you're going to find value in the Andrew Thomases of the world, and you're going to probably dump a ton of value if you are if you're overreacting to those guys, because it's tough. It's really tough because for us, we really want to say, okay, it's data, it's athleticism, and like which one matters more?
Data and football.
No
one gets that. We said we were getting away. We're doing so well getting away from the inside jokes.
We had some really good feedback. Some friends in the industry said that they liked our podcast, and they said one of the great things was that we stopped telling so many inside jokes, and so that was an inside joke. We promise we won't do anymore. But for some positions like quarterback, and I also view, so getting on a tangent, the people that bitch about the combine existing, so like all these LSU stands are like bitching about the fact that they had the gall to measure Joe Burrow's hands, are as bad as the people that are complaining that he has 9-inch hands, right? Because if you cover the NFL in part because and you get paid to do it in part because it's popular. So you don't get to bitch about, the popularity of the combine. You know what I'm saying? You don't get to reap the benefits of the popularity of the combine and then bitch about the fact that they measure hands, right? But at the same time, so quarterback, it doesn't matter much at all. Defensive end and rushing the passer matters quite a bit, but it doesn't matter necessarily as much as their ability to rush the passer, which we've seen in the NFL, college level. So, we'll go ahead and we'll run through those. That's the only way we really know how to, and then we'll talk about that Thursday, and we'll write up a little.
It's gonna be hot.
Yeah.
What about a guy like Ezra Cleveland, who had a ridiculous combine, really probably one of the best, and it flew very much under the radar because he's a Boise State tackle. But if you look at him compared to what Tristan Wirfs did, there's really not a lot of difference. Like, he was ridiculous. You ran a 7.26 3-cone. That's a guy where, does that all of a sudden change because we didn't know as much because he came from Boise State? Would you weigh now his athleticism? Do you think the model would weigh his athleticism a little more because it says, this is proof of something that he could have done also at a higher level?
I don't think so. I still think that it's going to measure. So there's not something in there that says downweigh, at the projection level, that says downweigh the college data because this guy is from Boise, but he's athletic. You still want to be able to see the guy. block, defensive linemen at the college level, for example, against Power 5 teams, it's just going to, again, weigh those two things. And if somebody is such a stark athlete, like, so we saw the St. John's, offensive tackle. We saw the, Lenore Ryan safety. Like, those guys are going to get kind of, college average data because we don't have a ton from them. And then they're going to get great athleticism measures. Like, you're going to sort of split the difference there. And I do think that that's probably fair. Just, given the fact that what we've seen historically is that, like, there are some players from small schools that do great and there are some that don't. And, you have to sort of weigh them appropriately.
The last thing that I would bring up about the combine, which is interesting, is it seemed like there were a lot of super fast offensive tackles. Mm-hmm. So our buddy, friend of the podcast, Fred Godelli, sent me an email. And he was like, what's up with this Mekhi Becton guy? Because it looks like the Giants are considering taking him. And I was like, well, he had to pass protect on both sides of the line on different plays within the same game. That's a little weird. He looks great on a couple of run blocks downfield. Mm-hmm. But overall, you don't know a ton about him. He goes out and runs this blistering 40. And my immediate thought was people are going to shit themselves because it's this huge guy who runs fast. But in pass protection, your first step is backwards. So, like, why do I care that much about the 40 if I'm looking at offensive tackles?
Well, there's always the question of, like, does this person have the athletic gifts to change things, right? So I don't know if the 40 is necessarily the place to look. Like, I would say, like, the various, like, drills that make you change direction.
Like the 3-cone, for example.
Well, and then the I would say explosiveness. So to a degree that, like, the 40 does measure explosiveness, but, like, doesn't measure, like, the broad jump and the vertical jump, to me, measure explosiveness differently. So if you're able to kick step more quickly than other tackles, you're probably going to have more success. That would be, to me, like, I think of that maybe as like let's consider that more heavily than 40. But yeah, it does look like I think that some people are just preparing for the combine better and knowing that that's, like, going to matter a lot. And, that's why we're seeing an uptick in it. Receivers, defensive backs, all those guys have already sort of known that. And that's why they ran track in high school. That's why they had, sprint coaches and all that kind of stuff. Maybe offensive linemen are starting to see that maybe there's a little bit, as our colleague Kevin Cole said, draft stock increases with these things, not necessarily actual performance.
Well, so that's my next question. The biggest impact that we'll see in the draft after this combine, what do you think it's going to be?
I would say draft position. I don't think
but specifically.
Well, I mean, I think everybody was sort of considering. So take Jonathan Taylor, for example. I think many people have wised up to the idea that a running back in the first round is a dumb idea. Like, there are some obviously holdouts, but there might be a team that's like, okay, this guy's such a great athlete. We can't pass. I mean, I get not taking him at 2 like Saquon, but let's take him at 15, or Isaiah Simmons. Like, for example, I think we disagree, just to spoiler alert for the next podcast, but I would still take Jeffrey Okudah over Isaiah Simmons because I think cornerback is more valuable than whatever Simmons is going to play at the NFL level, as great as he is. There might be people that consider Isaiah Simmons over Chase Young or Jeffrey Okudah, and I don't know if that's necessarily the reaction I'd have, but that might be the reaction to his, sick athleticism, especially after we saw what Derwin James did, falling all the way to 17 to the LA Chargers in 2018.
By the way, your Kansas City Chiefs pick at 32. They clearly really need a running back.
Well, somebody said, look,
Taylor seems like a great
said that
option.
Jonathan Taylor will eat in the Chiefs' offense, and I said, yeah, I mean,
yeah. So will Damian Williams.
Damian Williams ate in the Chiefs' offense. Yeah, we should have won the Super Bowl MVP. Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like
you're putting your money down then that the biggest, potential change is Jonathan Taylor. I think that's a good one.
I don't know I would say people were considering him at the back end of the first round, and here's why. got a huge, like a lot of tread on the tires. We're talking about 300-ish carries, 3 consecutive years. He didn't look that fast on tape because he's so big, and that offensive line is like the offense for the Wisconsin Badgers just screams slow. And like Quintez Cephas, that came true. He ran a 4.7. Like, and Jonathan Taylor's sort of this like big, bruising, physical back, and all of a sudden he can run a 4.39. Everybody's like, it changes their it alters their opinion of them, right? Like that's kind of like a thing where a player sort of like his tape now changes and looks fundamentally different because of the combine. Those would be the players that I would say.
Yeah, you're watching him run, you're going, oh, he doesn't look that fast. And you see he's really fast, and you're watching, you're like, wow, he's deceptive.
Now he's all of a sudden Saquon Barkley, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. Or like take Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think looks more explosive on film than Jonathan Taylor, but he runs the 40 quarter of a second slower, and now all of a sudden people are like, oh, he's a plotter. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like people forget that Alexander Madison ran a 4.7, and he's a pretty effective NFL back.
Do you remember what Alvin Kamara ran?
No.
I think it was a 4.5.
Which is, yeah. I mean, all of them are worse than Ramon Calais. Ramon Calais in the 5th round is going to be the best.
4.53 for Alvin Kamara. And terrible athlete. We were all right about it. I think the biggest...
Yeah. In the universe where 4.5 is slow, that's so funny, right? Like that's the combine in a nutshell.
Well, look, on my watch, I had, on my sundial, I had 4.43. So just keep that in mind. The one that I think is going to be the biggest, we have been talking about Isaiah Simmons for a while, but to me, this was a coming out party for Isaiah Simmons for a lot of people. And the momentum, especially because Chase Young didn't do anything, which, by the way, I think like no one, who gives a crap? It doesn't matter. But the fact that like Chase Young could have stolen all the narrative, Isaiah Simmons grabbed a bunch of it. And to me, you know, Jeff Okudah, like, he was great. He had a couple of good quotes. He looked super smooth. We know he's really good. But Isaiah Simmons, we knew he was really good, and now people are going to start talking more about how versatile he is.
Yeah.
To me, I don't think he was, we might have had him as a potential top 5 pick. I don't believe that there were that many people that seriously considered him maybe going to the Giants at 4, and now I think there's real consideration. And I think it makes the top of the draft. This is my number 2 big takeaway was going to be Tua is, I think, even more so in play. Those 4 picks behind Burrow now I just believe carry more significance than they did before because of Isaiah Simmons, because of Jeff Okudah, and because it appears as though Tua is healthy. Mm-hmm. All of those picks are now gaining a lot of value. And so the Redskins, the Lions, those teams have a lot to think about, and I think we'll get more offers now.
Now, do you think the price for the second pick or whomever when it gets to pick 3 or whatever, the Tua pick, does that go down? I think the price for the Tua pick goes down.
Interesting. Why?
Well, because people view Isaiah Simmons. So, like, let's say that Chase Young goes second and maybe Jeffrey Okudah goes third, which, hey, Detroit, if you get Jeffrey Okudah, that's a pretty good pick.
Is that your opinion?
Yeah. So, because Detroit could be a good defense if they had him, if they could figure out Slay and have him on the other side and Justin Coleman in the slot. But, like,
take your Lions jersey off.
Maybe. So if they get the further that Tua falls and the more of these sort of like elite prospects, people see Okudah's quote, like basically dragging a reporter for being an idiot, and then they see Chase Young and all the stuff that like he's next, like when he does his pro day and runs a 4.5 flat or something, it's gonna, and then obviously Isaiah Simmons, are people going to be like, look, we can have we could just pick.
Basically, what you're saying is I don't need to trade up because other teams are going to take these defensive guys.
Yeah.
That's really interesting because I think the momentum, to use a phrase that everyone loves so much during football games, outside of a football game, all Tua had to avoid was something super negative because people want to talk about quarterbacks, and there's a reason. Those are the players that are going to win you games in the NFL. And eventually, teams' fan bases are going to start thinking more and more about that. Like, the shine that was on Dwayne Haskins 2 months ago is going to start wearing off a little bit. And I know Chase Young is going to look sweet running a 4.5, but you're still going to sit there and go, okay, Dwayne Haskins, let me watch a few of those games again. Oh, that wasn't that great.
Yeah.
Can I imagine Tua throwing to Terry McLaurin? Yes, I can.
You sort of have to squint, and like I was reading a tweet by our own Mike Renner who said that he prefers Tua to Haskins, and I don't hate that take. But I also think to myself, are we a little bit biased by the fact that like we're folding in Haskins' NFL data, which takes away a little bit of that uncertainty, and sort of like allowing ourselves to be engulfed by the uncertainty that is Tua? That's a good question, right? Because people will go back, and right now, what the people are doing at the combine, especially for players that they are predisposed to like, they're taking all this information and using it to affirm their liking of a player. And if they're predisposed not to like another player, they can use literally NFL data to
let me ask you
strengthen
this.
their argument against a player.
We had one season of Dwayne Haskins. We have about the same number of seasons, albeit at a different level, right? So Haskins then played half season in the NFL. We saw one season of Tua and then like half a season in the SEC. Do you think we really know that much more about Dwayne Haskins playing in meaningless games for the fucking Redskins?
I don't, but I think people are ready people are ready to use that information either for or against a player.
Now, if I look you in the eye and I say, Eric, I am completely not taking last year's Redskins season into account. I am just thinking about how I value Dwayne Haskins going into last year's draft, and I value Tua more than I do Dwayne Haskins. I get the extra year, obviously, but I'm not even just if they were both in the same draft, knowing only what I knew about them in college, I still like Tua far more than Dwayne Haskins. Do you think that that there's any way I can truly rule out basically what he did at the NFL level?
No, I think that there's ways to say it. For example, Haskins was picked at 15, and I think if Tua lands at 15,
like holy shit, something will happen.
Exactly. Although at this time last year, Haskins was considered a top 10 pick, maybe even in the top 7 or 8. So the fact that he fell to 15 was sort of an upset. We weren't considering Daniel Jones a possibility for the 6th overall pick at this time last year, but all of that concern, yes, I do think that you can realistically say that you view Tua as a better prospect than Haskins at this point. My thing is, I think that the separation is due in large part to the fact that we've already seen Haskins, on the NFL field, and the results were, depending upon how you view them, anywhere from encouraging to dispiriting.
Sure. The last question I had for you is: would you rather have Denzel Mims or Henry Ruggs?
I think I would rather have Ruggs because he was productive in college, and people are going to gravitate towards Mims because he's a bigger player. But when I was, and granted, the quarterback Charlie Brewer is not great, but when I was watching Baylor games, I thought Mims was impressive at times. When I saw Alabama games, I thought Ruggs was impressive the entire time. So to me,
I thought it was going to be way closer than that. I think Ruggs legitimately is. I think he's way closer to the top 2 than he is the next 3.
Yeah, and I think that the NFL is gravitating away from this idea that your number 1 receiver needs to be this hoss.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? Like I think
absolutely. Look at the fucking Chiefs.
You look at Hollywood Brown. Well, yeah, and right, and just because a guy's small doesn't mean he can't big boy.
Heart of a champion.
Yeah, he can't big boy corners. Like I was watching, for a number of reasons, but I watched back Chiefs Vikings over this weekend, and Trey Waynes is the 11th overall pick, a 6'1" corner, and when the Chiefs needed it, they ran jump balls to Tyreek Hill on him, and he mossed the guy like twice, and it's like that kind of thing, explosiveness, all that stuff. I think we undervalue because historically we just have not liked small receivers, and the team that is going to get value in this draft is going to fade that idea.
So I had 2 more. Sorry, I thought I was out of thoughts. I have a couple more thoughts. Henry Ruggs' basketball mixtape is insane, and I need to know either why, like it's not Zion level. Zion's high school mixtape is out of this fucking world, but it's close, especially because how much shorter he is. If this got out there before he was going to play college sports, and you go, what sport is this guy playing? You'd be like, he's going to start for Duke at shooting guard.
Yeah.
So
he must not be able to shoot. I played.
But there are plenty of guys that can't shoot that can. You can learn to shoot.
I played high school football with a guy who ended up basically being the number 1 recruit in the state of Minnesota for what it's worth. And he was amazing, ran like a 4.3, all that kind of stuff, got a scholarship to play for the Gophers. And we played basketball together, and he was like the 9th best player on our team. Couldn't shoot a lick, but every single game he would somehow get a breakaway and have one of the Henry Ruggs dunks. And it was like, but there was, if you ever saw him shoot the basketball, like, sorry, Jay, if you're listening to this, I would not.
You're like, there's no way.
That's why you play 4 minutes
so
a game.
Broken. Dude, yeah. Sean Marion was shooting corner threes.
Sean Marion was successful. I mean, this guy actually had like a good form shot and couldn't hit.
Sean Marion looks like he's trying to play hot potato when he shoots the ball.
True. But I would just say that like that might be the case. The other thing is that football is just such a better gamble.
Sure.
So if you could play, so just the way it is, if you're the 10th best player on Alabama, you're going to get drafted in the first round of the NFL draft. If you're the 10th best player on Duke, like that's like I played high school basketball against Chris Humphreys. He had a scholarship at Duke, and like instead of being like, oh, I could be like the 8th best player on Duke and maybe get drafted, he went and played for the Gophers. The team was garbage for a year. They went 3-13 in the Big Ten, and he gets drafted and has a career. Like those are like the things that people like they make. Like I could be the 10th best player on a Louisville, right, and never get drafted, or I could go play for Alabama, and like you look at like McCole Hardman, doesn't even like get like 40 catches in a year for Georgia, but since he flashes all that athleticism, he's picked in the 2nd round. Ruggs is like a Jerry Jones version of McCole Hardman.
Wow. The last take I had, I'm going to let that one sit. The last take I had was our buddy Warren Sharp took the time after Isaiah Simmons ran a 4.39 to pimp the athleticism of Joe Burrow and post this video of Joe Burrow running away from Isaiah Simmons. The dude had the angle on him. I'm assuming you've watched this video.
Yeah.
I just don't think that that's a good example of Joe Burrow flat out running away from Isaiah Simmons.
Simmons was literally giving mine to the running back that was flaring out to the other side of the field. He also was like a yard or two away from this. Like, so if you look at the tape, it wasn't like they started in the same spot and then Burrow outran him.
No.
Simmons was like 2 yards to his left.
And Burrow starts sprinting towards the sideline.
Well, and the other thing is if you watch LSU tape the entire year, it's not like Burrow always ran when he moved, right? Like there are just as many tapes of Burrow escaping the pocket and then throwing the ball over your head. So he still had to pay some mind to the actual receivers that he was trying to cover. And then, and the other thing is the difference between 4.65 or whatever Burrow can run and 4.39 is not that much on the football field. So,
but people took the opportunity to remind all of us that speed in pads is not the same as speed in a leotard.
I don't even think that it's a speed in pads and speed in leotard thing.
I'm not saying it is. I'm saying that people took the opportunity to remind us. And it was just nice to see that. There's all those like trite sayings.
Now, if you want a linebacker who's like Isaiah Simmons, but you don't have to spend the 5th overall pick for, Davion Taylor of Colorado is about as athletic and projects about as well in our system.
That's nice. That's a nice little nugget. I was gonna say I don't care.
Yeah, if you want to be great and draft those players in the 3rd round.
Right. Now we're talking. We should do a 3rd round mock. We should do 3 straight rounds and not a single running back.
I would say to rip off our friend Josh Hermsmeyer, the PFF college buy low model. So like here 3rd round of Ramon Calais, for example.
You almost don't need to do it that way because it's just our whole big board is like a buy low model.
Right.
Because there's so many guys that get overvalued. All right, you ready for 5 things you would tweet out to let people know that you're at the combine?
Okay. Let's
just spit them out here.
Snake draft here? Okay.
My first one is this is PFF specific.
Okay.
This is targeting a certain person.
I feel
tweet copy. No, it's not you. Tweet copy. Was just in a meeting with a team where they told us how much they use our draft guide. You can get it, insert link.
Was that Steve?
Yeah. Which, by the way, is not an untrue story.
Yeah.
But it's just such a fucking...
It's a little bit of an eye-rolling.
Come on, man.
But look, every single thing here. So my favorite one was, and this is sort of like our buddy Mike Tanier tweeted this out, and it was when Arif Hassan, another friend of the podcast and the company, tweeted out that Derek Brown's 3-cone being slow is more concerning as an interior player than if he was a wide receiver. And of course, Mike Tanier, who was at the combine, made sure to tell everybody that the combine was overrated.
Interesting.
So he's like, this entire thing is an overreaction fest while being there.
I'm here to tell people here that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Is that yours?
Yeah, that's my first one.
Okay. The next one I have is a tweet about how the best part about being in Indy is that you never have to go outside, and then talking about how you've just been back and forth between, the field and the convention center and the hotel. But thank God I got to stay inside the whole time.
Yeah, mine is tangential to that, which is complaining about the fact that there are two Marriotts kitty corner to each other.
I can't figure out which is which.
I can't figure out which is which. That's an inside Indy joke that you can only tell if
Yes,
you've been at
something like, I used to think the JW Marriott was the best hotel in Indy, but now I really like the downtown Marriott.
It's almost as silly as, look, it's almost as bad as making fun of the fact that the most expensive steaks there are poorly cooked, but not quite there.
They're terrible. I had a steak at, we both had in the same trip, we had a steak at Prime 47, which turns into a great bar/nightclub later. It's not, you don't go there for the steak, you go there for later on. That steak was burned to a crisp.
I was trying to figure out if I was allowed to be like, is this good? Like, I didn't know, and I was like thankful to be there because we got to interact with somebody.
Oh, you're going to do it here?
Well, no.
Got to have dinner with someone on a team.
Yeah. But I was grateful to be there, and obviously the sides were good and the drinks were good. But I was like wondering to myself if I was allowed to make fun to rip on the steak.
The nice thing is when you're with me, I let you know.
That's true.
And I just make fun of it. And then we went to St. Elmo's on Thursday night after the live show, and that steak, they went out of their way to say, hey, by the way, the steak is cooked on the rare side. So if you're a pussy, get it cooked more well done. I, not being a pussy, ordered medium rare as usual, and it came out medium to medium well.
See, this is something that's interesting. So you are not as tough if you like steak that's not. So
I don't think
so how
it's
does it go? If more well done, people might think you have to be tough to eat it.
No.
But you're saying
here's what it is.
It's actually
Let me
y is
explain it
equal
to
to
you.
minus X.
That's what it is. So people don't actually like well done steak. They just are fucking terrified of having steak that's pink because they think their parents have scared them into thinking they're gonna get fucking E. coli or some shit. And
The coronavirus.
the coronavirus is gonna come for me. So they just suck down this piece of cardboard instead and claim to like well done steak. Okay. My next one is it's impossible for me to explain how impressive blank athlete is unless you were standing right here with a stopwatch timing him run his 40, which is everyone in the stadium.
That is the absolute stone woat tweet. I almost called it queef, but
here's my stopwatch. Check it out. I'm in the stadium. I probably stole one of yours, but that's
as bad as being like, I saw the guy play in person once, and like because of that, I have some insider knowledge of how good he is.
You got any more?
No, those are my main two. My main two were complaining.
I have one more.
Okay.
And this is the number one tweet you tweet out to let people know you're in fucking Indianapolis. How sick am I? I'm at the combine. You're in a place that probably has nicer weather and are sleeping on a nicer bed. But I digress. This tweet is shrimp cocktail. How good is it?
Ugh.
And you just tweet a picture of some shrimp cocktail from St. Elmo's in the middle of the country in Indianapolis as if you are having something that no one else can get anywhere else in the world. Let me just explain that the shrimp cocktail at these places, they bring it to you with cocktail sauce that has enough horseradish to fucking kill someone because they need to disinfect the shrimp that they're giving you.
We almost lost.
Our buddy Mike Ayers over here.
Mike Ayers
sucked down a whole fucking cup of that thing.
And the year ago, friend of the program, Evan Silva, probably
nearly died.
3 glasses of wine.
We nearly lost him.
I remember his face like caving in after having one, and like bless Warren Sharp, but Warren nurtured him back to life for a little bit.
Our buddy Evan Silva. This is maybe the greatest. This is such a great combine story. that dude.
Should we tweet it out?
That dude, and I didn't see him this year, and it was my biggest regret from the combine. I apologize again, Evan. I'm sorry. He wanted me to, by the way, on Friday, I was like, yo, man, I'm sorry I missed you. Like, where are you at? Expecting him to be, like having coffee or something. He's like, I'm at the bar. And I go, dude, it's 1 p.m.
Never change.
He goes, meet me out. And I was like, I legitimately sat there and I was like, fuck, I have a ride that's leaving right now. Should I just say, screw it? I came very close to doing that. But anyways, he was pouring sweat in prime a couple years ago. And the best thing about it was he just wore it.
Yeah.
Now, apparently, our buddy Josh told us he was doing it again this year, and he has not changed. He has not turned in to a soft.
I got to see him
man.
on, what day was that? Thursday after the live show. He was in good spirits then.
We're getting inside joking.
It was fun.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. Let's do some free agent stuff before we get out of here. So there are a couple of quarterbacks that are still out there, and there actually is a market on where they might end up. Mm-hmm. Tom Brady, plus 100 to return to New England.
Yes, I think they took a decent amount of these down, just like the draft props they had them before Combine took them down. But these were available until about a couple days ago. Gives you kind of an idea of what's going on.
Where the market's at.
Yeah.
Now, I'm very curious about Brady. Rivers is minus 175 to go to Indy.
Yes.
Which I think is very interesting. I want to talk about that one in a second. But I want Brady first. So then the video comes out. Leave that for what you will. I'm not going to read into it. But to me, the Pats are in this they're in this place that's not too dissimilar to where the Clippers were last year. Where it's like, okay, we need to bring this guy back. The Clippers wanted to bring in Kawhi. And they go, the only way we can do that is if we kind of just say, fuck it, we've got to try and win over the next 2 years. Mm-hmm. And the Patriots are going to have to do that if they bring Tom Brady back. If they don't, I'm of the belief that they are going to try and get Trevor Lawrence on their team. I don't think they go, hey, Ryan Tannehill, come here. Hey, Teddy Bridgewater, come here. I think they go, our offense is going to be really fucking bad. Mm-hmm. Let me trade Stephon Gilmore.
Yeah.
Let me just, why not? And that would be like Belichick's greatest thing is that he could go, I let the king go. I tore it all down and I rebuilt the empire. Mm-hmm. That would be the coolest thing for him. So to me, the Patriots are in this spot where they either are leveraging their future or they're just going all in on it and letting the Buffalo Bills win the AFC East next year.
Yep. And the thing that came to my mind, there was a couple things that came to my mind when I saw this, was the Colts and how they interacted with Peyton Manning. 1 year he's basically injured, and now they didn't really plan for it, but they sort of transitioned nicely into luck, right, with the first pick. The other one was the San Antonio Spurs when David Robinson was injured, and they said, whatever David Robinson is, we have to get another piece to make this thing work. And I think with your New England, you say to yourself, okay, Brady's gone. We still have Belichick as the de facto David Robinson in this case. We have to tank so that we can get somebody to complement him as the head coach. I think the Crafts, and I think that Belichick, and Belichick, without Brady, has not made the playoffs in 5 of the 6 seasons he's been a head coach. So, I think that that's a good point, and so then the question then becomes who wins the AFC East, and I think the Bills are the prohibitive favorite right now, as much as we apparently hate them.
The question to me is actually even deeper than that. It's, if you are thinking about the Patriots and only the Patriots, is it better to bring Tom Brady back or to actually slow play it and say, hey, buddy, we're not going to trade a bunch of draft capital. Shit. This happened to me 3 weeks ago, and I thought I was over it.
The best part about you is that you have far fewer personal. So me, I'm a mathematician to the full degree. I have a lot of personable issue. I have some quirks. You have very few quirks, but when you have one, they're great.
Oh man, that was brutal.
Draft capital.
Yeah,
and the best part was it was sort of in that intermediate time where none of it got on air.
Yep. No, thankfully no one actually knows about this, but I had a solid 5 minutes where I couldn't say capital and kept saying capitable, and it was a disaster. Anyways, the Patriots would have to trade, much like the Clippers, a lot, I think, of their capital in the draft to appease Tom Brady. And you're only going to have Tom Brady for a few years, just like they're only going to have Kawhi for a few years. So the question is, and I'm kind of stealing this from, I heard Bill Simmons and Ryan Russillo talking about how the Clippers, maybe they'd rather have not leveraged their whole future because they gave up all of this. And it's to a lesser degree in New England, but I'm really curious if, in fact, the Patriots want to bring back Tom Brady. Like, I don't think that's necessarily a given. I can see very clearly a path by which they are better off not bringing him back. And I don't know if that we're hearing things like Brady is wanting to go elsewhere. And I'm wondering if some of that is really just New England saying, maybe we don't want him back.
Yeah, here's the thing. If the Patriots would have extended an offer to Brady, I think part of him. So the thing with Brady is that I think there's part of him that wonders if he's a product of the Patriots, right? And as the Patriots get worse and worse supporting him, and he can continue to produce 12-4 seasons, like a little bit of that veneer, like becomes bigger in stature, right? Like the fact that he's elevating that team when their best receiver is a kind of a washed Julian Edelman and a very washed Mohamed Sanu, I think speaks to Brady's legacy. If they were to let him go, draft somebody else, and get like that's why I think he sort of is waiting this thing out, because I think if the Patriots would have shown any, and that's the hidden part of this story, is the Patriots are not showing him any sort of like reassurance, right? They're sort of very much letting him hit the open market, in which case I think if you bet Patriots plus 100 for Brady's place he's going to start next year, it's kind of a bad bet.
I agree.
I think it's far less than 50-50 that he returns.
I believe that Tom Brady is still capable of being a top 10 quarterback in a situation that is positive. It used to be the case where Tom Brady could be a top 10 quarterback in a neutral situation. That seems to have passed a little bit. Now I think his situation was probably worse off. Yeah. But at most, you're doing it for a couple more years. And, man, I think it's interesting.
And the Patriots are smart enough to know a couple things. They're smart enough to know.
Do you think they are?
Yes.
That's another question I have.
So I think the Patriots' intelligence is – so I don't know how to say this.
They drafted a running back in the first round.
I think their intelligence is both very good and overrated. Because, Belichick, for example, against a Baltimore Ravens team who's clear, like, even though we at the time we liked the Patriots in that game against the spread, it's pretty clear if you looked at the fundamentals that at the time, and if you play at 2 quarters against them, the Ravens are a better team than the New England Patriots. The New England Patriots kicked a field goal on 4th and 1 from the 1 instead of trying to go in and tie the score against them in that Sunday Night Football game.
Oh, and by the way, they did that in the Super Bowl a couple years before, or the year before.
So the Patriots' intelligence is overrated but still good. And I think when you look at how they've built a defense, they're probably attuned to the fact that defense is a player or two of a perturbation away from being as bad as it was at the beginning of the 2017 season. So do you really lean into Brady and think, because it's the same problem the Vikings had with Cousins, the Jaguars had with Bortles, the Bears had with Trubisky. You're like, well, if we can just fix the defense as is, and we can get the quarterback here and have him just perform the way he performed when the defense was great, we can have a good team. They're smart enough, I think, to know that the defense isn't that stable. And hence, maybe their reluctance to run it back with Brady and to rebuild.
The Patriots understand the take many shots in the draft. We're not very good at. No one is very good at drafting players. To me, they get that. They do not go for 4th down nearly enough. And we have given them credit for saying that coverage is more valuable than pass rush and investing in coverage. I do believe that a huge part of that is Bill Belichick just being so confident in himself that he can scheme a pass rush. And so I maybe we're giving them too much credit there. But I think there are so many questions with the Patriots around Brady, around whether they're actually smart enough to say, hey, if we lose Brady, are we tanking? Like, that to me is the smartest path. It's very interesting.
You also look at the division, the Bills, as much as we give them shit for Josh Allen, the Bills are pretty well run. They have a
very well run.
They
take advantage of those edges.
I think so. And then And then the Dolphins are a team that people sleep on, but the Dolphins will probably be pretty good in a few years. Like there's a chance. I think that their rebuild is further ahead than the Browns were, and we've seen the Browns have hiccups.
Yep.
But you look at Brian Flores, from all accounts, looks like a pretty good coach. They have tons of draft picks. They've staffed up a little bit in analytics. Like they're not that far away. And then the Jets are always going to be 7-9 and beat crappy teams, right? So if you're a bad team, right, the Jets might even beat you a couple times. And then where are you? You're 9-7, fighting, grinding it out for the AFC East title in a conference. And here's the other thing: you're not beating Mahomes anytime soon. You're not beating Watson that many times anymore, right? Like they got drilled by Houston in that Sunday night game. You're not beating Baltimore anytime soon. Like,
true.
Indianapolis, I think, is a better outlook than you do, right? You kind of look around, and we just talked about Buffalo.
I'm with you.
I think the window is closed in New England, and maybe that's what they think.
Phillip Rivers going to the Colts. Is it Colts or bust in your mind for him?
No, the report's out today that Jameis is likely out of Tampa Bay. I think Rivers to Tampa Bay would be a good. Like he looks at Tampa Bay and probably sees the weapons that they have, and thinks to himself,
"Yeah."
And plus, Florida,
I go both ways. I could see Bruce Arians being like, "This guy cannot do what I want him to do." Dude, Bruce Arians married up. Timo wrote a great article about this, but we look at where teams attack. In other words, where their routes attack down the field,
Very
and
good work.
Where the quarterback actually targets. And Bruce Arians, his attack zones are intermediate, 10 to 19. It's all red. That's where he wants to attack. And that's where he wants to run his routes. And Phillip Rivers is not the guy that is just pumping the ball downfield with reckless abandon.
Yep.
Carson Palmer, Jameis Winston. Cam Newton makes way more sense to me in Tampa Bay. And I would venture to say that for Phillip Rivers, finding a team that has a very solid offensive line, unlike he had in Los Angeles, which was an absolute travesty. No guy got hit more than Phillip Rivers over the past, I think it was like 8 years or something like that. But they were just an absolute atrocity. The Colts have that. They have a great coach. They have a coach that's willing to be amenable to his quarterback in Frank Reich, right? He changed things up based on what Andrew Luck needed, based on what Jacoby Brissett needed. To me, it's Colts or bust for Phillip Rivers. And for the Colts, I kind of think it's Phillip Rivers or bust, to a sense that, like, I think they would try and get Teddy Bridgewater, but I think there you're still giving yourself the option to, like, tank. Like, they're either going to try and win that division or there's just going to be no shot.
So if you're them, when you look, right.
Because if they get Rivers, they're the favorite in that division, yes.
Yes. And I think Bridgewater is a person that, like, Bridgewater is like drafting a young quarterback, right? Like, you can.
Correct.
You can go back
in the second round.
You can go back, well, yeah, except for the price tag will be a little higher, but you can go back in.
Yes and no, though, right? Because the price tag will be high, but you can probably get him to a short deal.
That's right. Yes, especially if you give him the opportunity to start. Like he might take a 2-year, $38 million deal, right? And which is on the low end of starters. And as far as a commitment money-wise, probably similar to a top 15 pick, which is where you at. So if you take Bridgewater, you're basically saying, look, like, we're not tanking because there's a good chance he'll be good, but we're also not committing to trying to win now, because if Rivers, so like I think of the 2010 Vikings when I think of this, you went out and you get Brett Favre for 1 year, $20 million, takes you to the NFC Championship game, you lose, you do the exact same thing, and it's an absolute travesty to the point where the following year you're 3-13. Sure. Like, that's the Colts, right? If they go out and get Rivers and he's brutal, then you're not going to have as big of an opportunity because you go out and look at this is going to be the year for a quarterback. If you want to get a quarterback outside of the draft, this is the year where everybody's available. And so next year, you're probably not, like, a lot of things are going to be resolved going into next year. So this is your shot. So either you have Rivers, which I do think is the, Houston's vulnerable. Let's go take a shot at them. Jacksonville's garbage, at least for now. And Tennessee is, like, again, we're going to bet Tennessee's under next year again. So it's like, you go ahead and look at that and you're like, okay, well, we can win this division if we have quarterback play on the upper end. The question is how much do you want to be 3-13? I think if Bridgewater's your starter, your low end is 6-10, 7-9. Your upper end is probably not as high as with Rivers, but still has a shot.
Yeah, and your low end is lower in the sense that if it's not working out, you can just say,
yeah, peace out.
We're gonna start someone that gives us no shot.
And here's the thing, like I talked about this on Twitter.
I'm biased because I saw Chris Ballard in a elevator. He and I are now best friends.
Yeah.
But the guy clearly works out, so we have a connection. So I can see that he's smart. How's that for a tweet?
I saw Roger Goodell at the
yeah, he was in the gym.
Yeah, he was doing something that it looked like his chiropractor gave him.
Hold on. I was going to mention this later at the end of the podcast. There were a lot of people that we saw in the gym in Indy that I have zero respect for because they just didn't do shit. Roger Goodell came in there.
He was going through a regimen.
He fucking worked out.
Yeah.
And that guy gets a ton of shit. The dude clearly was not in there to just fuck around. He actually worked out. I'm giving him props there. Don't.
I wasn't. I was just saying it looked like
he was doing a lot of core work.
Yeah, for sure.
And that was smart.
Good for him. I'm happy for him. I forgot what I was going to say now, but
speaking of people that are getting pushed in the right directions, Mitchell Trubisky. So the word out of Chicago is they are looking for a quote veteran quarterback.
Nice.
To push Mitchell Trubisky. And I'm going to give you an analogy.
Okay.
Okay. I'm in a relationship. I'm not saying this is me. I'm saying this is what this is like.
Okay.
I'm in a relationship. I kind of like this girl, but I kind of don't. And if you pushed me and said, do you want to be with this person forever? I would say no, but I'm way too much of a pussy to actually just dump her. So what I'm doing is I'm going around looking for other things that can entice me and just force the relationship to be over. And that is what the Chicago Bears are doing. They are walking around being like, yeah, you're not that much more attractive than my current quarterback, but you're new.
Yeah.
Maybe you can finally break us off.
Jeez. I mean,
it's a joke.
I can't say I hadn't.
What are they doing?
I can't say I didn't take this tactic with one girlfriend in college, but I might have.
Oh, no. I didn't need to know that.
But, yeah.
I mean,
let's just put it this way: it's not effective.
So let's look at Mitchell Trubisky here for a second. The guy has played 3 years in the NFL. His PFF grade is 27th, 33rd, and 29th out of 35 starting quarterbacks in the NFL. It has not been solid. His accuracy has been below average. There's nowhere that he has been an above average quarterback from a process standpoint. So you're saying, hey, you are an older quarterback who's looking for work. You're not going to get a chance at the beginning of the season to start ahead of Mitchell Trubisky, a bottom third of the league quarterback, but we still want you to come in here. Can you explain this to me?
Well, you're not going to get a good player in that regard.
Right.
You're not even going to get somebody of the ilk of Andy Dalton.
This is basically describing Chase Daniel.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right? Yeah. So what? So say you bring Andy Dalton in. Andy Dalton is a way better quarterback than Mitchell Trubisky. Now you're either going to lie to your team and force Mitchell Trubisky to start over him because you invested all that high pick and you traded up for it, and that's only going to win you. That's only going to lose you respect in the locker room. Or you bring in a guy like Andy Dalton, he supplants Mitch Trubisky, but your team still sucks.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's like you. And that's
either way, are they not the worst team in that division?
Yeah, I mean, but they're the worst team, right? And that's I was going to say with the fact that when you talk about quarterback play, you don't always have to be as decisive. Like the Lions were legitimately in contention for the NFC North and for a month and a half, and now they're picking third. I think if you're the Bears, don't you just take a similar road? Mm-hmm. If the defense is as good as it was in 2018 and then Trubisky plays okay again, then go for it. If he plays like crap, then go for the number one. You don't have to decide that now, do you?
No.
I think that that's the problem. Yeah, the issue is Matt Nagy, right? The issue is that he's a pretty good coach and he doesn't want to lose his job. He doesn't want to go back and replace Eric Bieniemy when Bieniemy gets a head coaching job after this year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like he does. So he wants to be able to sort of Dalton his way through a 9-7 season. Everybody pats him on the back because, hey, look what you did with Andy Dalton. And then go and get a real quarterback and then, get yourself to 12-4 again. It's like, but that's to me, that's just such a
You're just kicking the can down the road. You either cut the cord now, or you give it one last shot.
And it hits on the fact that these teams are fundamentally bad at determining if the head coach is the reason a team sucks.
True. By the way, we're gonna have Eric Bieniemy on the pod soon.
Yep.
That's gonna be a lot of fun.
It was great.
I'm just trying to intersperse as many of the hey, I was at the combine and I was with cool people. Deal. It's great. But
when is the live show going up on YouTube relatively soon?
The live pod went up last week as a podcast.
Okay.
And I'm not actually sure if it's on YouTube yet.
Okay. You can see us interviewing Vance Joseph.
Vance Joseph, who we should talk about this for a second. Vance Joseph said something that I thought was really cool. I asked him, on 4th and short, do you see going for it as not trusting your defense? And he spun it in a really cool way, which was, as the defensive coordinator, actually, on the other side of things, I don't want to see the other team go for it on 4th and short because I'm not ready to stop it. 4th and short is a very tough play to stop. And it was basically what we always talk about, which is when you go for it on 4th and short, you're doing what the opposing team's fans don't want you to do.
Yeah,
it's a good litmus test.
Which means it's the right decision.
Now, if you're doing something that the opposing defensive coordinator doesn't want you to do, that's probably an equally good litmus test.
He said something like, I don't have any 4th and 1 calls, which, I mean, I would imagine it's very tough to do that.
I thought that was fascinating. Okay, real quick. AJ Green, franchise tag. Do you think this is real? Are they actually keeping him? Or is this just we've paid him a bunch of money, we need to recoup some value from him, so we're going to franchise tag and trade?
Well, I think, if you're AJ Green, you don't have a ton of leverage in this situation because you haven't played for the better part of 2 years. And so you're getting a new quarterback. Like, this is where the franchise tag, I think, really does have a use. It's when a guy like Green is sort of disgruntled, but he also hasn't given much to his team in the last 2 years. And obviously Bengals want to keep, give him some, but for the Bengals, I mean, the Bengals are a quarterback away. Every team's a quarterback away that doesn't have a quarterback. So you get Burrow in there. You have the 33rd pick. If they were to get rid of Green, so I don't think the marginal value of trading Green for a top 2nd round pick is all that high because you already have a top of the 2nd round pick. What you need to do is surround Burrow with legitimate NFL players, and that's what the franchise tag allows you to do in this situation.
I'm with you. You need a guy that, if healthy, is good. That's what you need. You need good players.
And that's what AJ Green is.
That's what AJ Green is. Trading him for a crapshoot that you're already going to be taking doesn't seem like it's the smartest move, in my opinion. Right? So I think this is a franchise tag with the intention of keeping him there and saying, hey, we're going to build something here. Ayers, you got it. Thanks, buddy. My computer was going to die, which is probably a sign.
Probably a sign we should talk about XFL for about a minimal amount of time.
Real quick. Dez Bryant.
No.
Okay, the only reason I bring this up is I have a theory. Okay, here's the theory. You know how when things have been going wrong politically, there have been stories that have come out that have nothing to do with politics, but take our eyes off of it?
Yeah.
That is what this is. So the Cowboys saw an opportunity to talk about something other than Dak not getting a deal done.
Yep.
And now it's, in my dreams, I've been thinking about Dez coming back. Also, Jason Witten probably moved on. We need another guy that's old and can't really do anything.
You could always move him to tight end.
Could play tight end.
Yeah.
And there you go. That's my Dez take. Yeah. There's no chance in hell he's adding any value to your team.
No, I mean, the only receiver that was playing that old and was actually decent was Terrell Owens. And
right.
Are you as physically gifted and as big of a crazy person in the weight room as Terrell Owens?
Dez is probably kind of close. I'd probably rather have current Jerry Rice than Dez Bryant.
And even current Jerry Rice was cut by the Broncos. Sure. You know, like when he was done.
No, actually current Jerry.
Yeah.
All right, XFL, give it to me. I watched 2 snaps, and that was on accident.
Okay. Well,
yeah, it was. I'm changing the channel. My YouTube TV thinks I want to watch all football,
yep.
So it recommends it. I then go to it on accident, and I immediately cower in fear and then change the channel.
You go to Pelicans Lakers.
Yes, I watched that.
So what I thought, again, I've been fairly happy with the XFL as a product, but my expectations are not that high. But I will say that one thing that I noticed this week that was pretty cool, you know how we talked about last week or 2 weeks ago, how the broadcasts were talking about gambling as sort of something that they felt that they needed to, and then we're sort of like not, right? Like at the end of the Houston-Dallas game, they talked about the last turnover with respect to how it affected the total, which I thought was kind of neat. Like they actually were in tune. So that total in that game was like 51.5. It was at 47. Dallas was going in for the game-tying touchdown. And instead of just talking about it from a football perspective, they talked about it from the total of the game, which I thought was great.
That's nice.
And that was the FS1 broadcast. That was the Greg Olson and Burkhart. And then the last game, which was on ESPN2, which Joey Galloway was the commentator, and then I can't remember who the play-by-play guy was, but they actually published from Circa Sports or like Caesars player props, and they were talking about the player props as the game sort of went on, which I thought was, again, not perfect, and certainly if you and I were broadcasting a game, we would do it differently, right? Certainly we would like talk about the gambling aspect, I think maybe overboard. But I do think it was a move in the right direction because, in my opinion, without gambling in DFS, and we're starting to see that maybe not all the DFS pools are being filled anymore, without gambling in DFS, I don't think the XFL has much of a shot.
Yeah, it doesn't have a shot regardless.
You don't think?
No, man, there are no sports going on these weekends, and still no one cares.
Yeah,
and the product sucks.
And the issue is going to be, so they went out, and I joked about how they went up against the Combine on both days. And
right.
Yeah, but in 2 weeks, they're going to be going up against the NCAA tournament, which is really going to suppress. I mean, I'll probably still watch football because college basketball sucks compared to any football.
The tournament doesn't, though.
Sure, the tournament is very much like so.
The tournament adds drama. By the way, I watched a little bit of college basketball too. Holy shit, they suck.
So bad.
They are so bad.
I have a friend that does a little bit of gambling on college basketball. So I'll every once in a while I'll bet what he does and I'll watch his plays. And my God,
it's like 15 minutes into the game.
It's just an egregious. And then
mid-range brick. But mid-range brick.
I do agree, and it's what the NFL did. Like 20 years ago, no one would watch Browns Bengals because no one gave a fuck. But like now, it's like gambling, DFS, and so like the drama of all of that stuff adds to a bad NFL game. The same thing's true about NCAA. Like each of those games is garbage. But talking about a 16 seed being a 1 seed adds a level of compellingness to the game that you wouldn't watch it in a vacuum. I think the issue is the XFL is going to is having a hard time capturing any of that because early on in the league we're all coming off of the Super Bowl, which either we have a ton of money in our gambling accounts or none, and we're chasing. And now it's like, okay, we're in this malaise here where they got to figure out a way to generate interest. And I'm a little bit more bullish than you, but not that much. I think it's really gonna make it through one season for sure. But I wonder if it's gonna make it to season 2.
Here's the thing: the worst NFL game has players that were studs in college that you invested a lot of emotional capital in. That is not the case with the exception of Cardale Jones in the XFL. And that is a big reason why people can't get excited about it. You've never heard of these guys before. And you can kind of put up with, hey, I'm watching Villanova, who I have just always liked. I don't know any of these guys' names, but there's an emotional connection there. The Tampa Bay Vipers, is that it?
Yeah.
Right. I just can't do it. So, nice try. All right, Cincy, why?
Okay, go for it.
Okay. I came home on Friday, and Saturday morning, I'm in the gym at my apartment. And there's one guy in there, and he's on the bike where you're sitting down. Then, it has a backrest. You're in a chair, basically. Okay, so that you can get a good workout in riding the bike. This bike is a little different because you're sort of reclining and pedaling at the same time. Now, the best thing is that I walk in, and this dude is arms crossed. arms crossed, reclined, pedaling at a very slow pace. I'm like, all right, maybe he's just getting, he's getting warmed up here. 10 minutes go by. He now has the phone out. Dude is like just scrolling. His arms are still crossed, but like has the phone perched on like one of his arms. Scrolling.
Same.
Scrolling. This dude biked for 30 minutes. I know because I happened to walk behind right at 30 minutes and he got off. His metrics were probably something as follows. The dude had 30 minutes of biking, probably liked, I would guess, 20 photos on Instagram, sent in the range of 50 text messages.
To how many women, you think?
0. He burned 136 calories in 30 minutes. Just standing up and walking, you are going to burn more than that. I was utterly shocked that someone did this, and I felt bad. I felt like maybe I should have given, if I wasn't in the middle of a workout, I might have suggested a few things to him. It was the most peasantly workout I have ever seen, and I have seen some bad ones. 136 calories in 30 minutes is what he burned on the reclining bike.
Yeah, that's bad.
It's fucking terrible.
You might as well. So I used to do this thing in grad school where I always lived within walking distance of school. I would walk with a book. So I remember I read Audacity of Hope while I was in grad school, and I read it basically on my walk to school for 2 weeks. And, I'd almost get hit by a car a few times. But I probably burned more calories doing that shit than whatever this guy was doing.
Absolutely. It's not hard to do. It's not impressive. So that was my story from the Cincy-ish Y.
We didn't. Yeah, my only story from the Indy Y was doing sit-ups next to the Raj dog Goodell. Remember last year we got to see Adam Schefter in his element.
Yes.
Holding on to the TV on the treadmill while tweeting his takes. But that didn't happen.
I saw our buddy Bill Belichick. He came in and was
he wearing like a bag, like a plastic bag?
He does the same. From what I can tell, he does the same thing every time. He wears like a pretty innocuous, windbreaker or whatever. He had shorts on and he had a binder the size of an Encyclopedia Britannica with plays, and he just puts this thing down. He puts an incline on. He starts walking, and he is flipping pages. The man is working. He does not give a shit about really burning a whole lot, or maybe gets a sweat at some point.
Yeah.
But he's killing 2 birds with 1 stone.
Yep, and this guy was very clearly killing 2 birds.
Well, this guy was
17 tweets with 1 stone. So
this guy was like 27. So some issues there. Anyways, that's our show. On Thursday, we hope to have a mock draft to discuss. It should be pretty great. Yeah, that's all I've got. So thanks, guys. Peace.